Thanks, Max. So, yeah, my name is Chris Horner. I'm an Android developer at Itty Bitty Apps, and I want to spend the next 10 minutes convincing you that developers are the last line of defense when it comes to your app having a quality user experience. I know a lot of people think that this is something that's the domain of a design team, that this is their responsibility to implement that. But I think that developers are actually in a really unique position when it comes to sort of being the last guardians of ensuring that we're delivering a good product. And I think all of us want to make a good product, right? That's why we're here. We're interested in making something that our users want to use. And when it comes to making a product, there's sometimes a lot of people who are involved in that. I think we at least have a product owner. If you're working by yourself, maybe that's you, but maybe you're working in a larger team and that's somebody else. If your team is big enough, you might actually have some BAs who are helping you out. Maybe you've got some project managers who are helping to wrangle everything and get everything organized. But I think all of these people then kind of get some requirements together and talk to a design team, and the design team comes up with a whole lot of different UIs, and then that gets passed off onto us, the developers, in order to build this good product. Now, I know I've kind of represented things sort of very hierarchically here, and that's not necessarily how we work, right? Everyone's coming up with their own ideas, bouncing ideas off of each other. We work together as one cohesive unit. Everyone's very happy, and nothing ever goes wrong. But if we actually think about the structure on how stuff is built, I think we've got a lot of people who have ideas about things that need to be put into an application. And all of that goes to us, the developers, and then we're the ones who are actually pushing that instruction set into the app. And that's the thing that the user interfaces with at the end of the day. So it's because of this bottleneck, I think that we're kind of it when it comes to ensuring that an app is actually really good. So I want us to start taking responsibility for this. Now, we do work very closely with designers. I know a lot of developers aren't necessarily very design-minded, and we work very closely with them. And maybe we get an initial spec of what the UI is going to look like, and then we implement that, and then we'll show that back to the design team, and the design team takes one look at what we've done and says, "Oh, okay, no, this is fine. We can provide some feedback, tweak some things, and then make this into a really good product." The problem is time marches forward, and we get closer and closer to a release date. And I feel when that happens, part of this feedback loop kind of shrinks down a bit, and we lose the ability to iterate quickly internally. And so I think it's at this point that developers kind of need to step up. There's a lot of talk at the moment about how designers now need to learn how to do a bit of code, and I think the opposite is true for developers. We need to learn how to do a bit of design. And there's a few ways we can do that. I think the obvious answer for Android developers is like, okay, we'll just go onto the material design website and maybe just have a quick read, look through some of the ideas and rationale behind some of these components that we're using. Another one I really like is this website called lawsofux.com. Great read, look through that, just some basic principles around UX. It's worth just getting that high-level scope. But I think, to me, what makes good design is oftentimes empathy with your users, and nothing builds empathy like dog fooding. So dog fooding is the process of you using your own application every day. And I know a lot of teams can't do this, but if you can, I think it's really beneficial. Because when you become a user of your application, you start to notice things inside of your app. In fact, you start to notice things that really annoy you. But what's amazing about a developer becoming a user is that you're like no other. You have the power to change things faster than anybody else can. And that's a really special position to be in. Developers, too, are kind of important because we have ideas and we know things. We have some very domain-specific knowledge that other people don't know about. Then we can communicate that to other teams. I want to take one example, say like Jetpack Compose, right? This isn't something that a design team or a project manager knows about, but it's something that we as Android developers do know about. And so I've just taken like a random collection of stuff from Jetpack. I think all of these things, in one way or another, can actually have a really big impact on user experience. Let's take one, for example, dynamic animation. So this was kind of brought to the forefront at this year's Google I/O. And I thought this was really exciting. It's been around for a while, but people kind of slept on it because it was called spring-based animation. But what it's really about is kind of building animations that can be interrupted and choose a new target as they're playing out. And this is cool, and this is something we need to talk to our design team about, like, we can implement this. This is a new thing we have now. Another example might be transitions. I think transitions are super important, especially when it comes to shared element transitions. Can do a lot to really improve the user experience of your app. But I feel when it comes like time to work with our designers, often one of two things happens. We either get given a sea of screens and we're told you need to build all of these, and there's no discussion about how we're going to go from A to B. Or maybe the opposite happens where the designers spend far too long inside of After Effects, meticulously crafting an animation that we've got no idea how we're going to implement this. But you can use your knowledge to talk about how can we actually build some animations inside of our app. Maybe you're really into icon animations, and you want to talk about how you found this cool tool called Shapeshifter by Alex Lockwood, and that's a nice way of creating these Android vector drawable animations. Maybe we could sprinkle those throughout our app to give it that nice level of polish. But something people don't talk about a lot is how code has an effect on UX. We always think about code as something that we need to make more efficient, that we need to improve from that standpoint. But we actually also do a lot of work on our code to improve user experience. Let's just take one quick example with some RxJava. I won't spend too long looking at the specifics, but we're going to observe some data, I'm going to map it to some UI state, and then later on I want to render that state somewhere inside of my app. But I've heard that I don't want to do this I/O operation on the main thread. I don't want to block for my user, so I'm going to make sure that I put that on a background thread and then observe that on the main thread. And that's all good, but now I've realized, okay, I need to cache this somehow. I don't want to have to fetch this data every time the user gets to the screen, so I'll put in some sort of caching mechanism here. Of course, we've done this behind a thread boundary skip, though. And so what that means is even though we've done a cache, we're going to actually miss the first frame when our UI appears. So just by swapping this around, we've dramatically improved the UX of our app. And this isn't something we've done for efficiency's sake. This is something we've done purely for the user. Another example I think is really common are login screens that look like this. Let's just define one really quickly. I think it looks like a linear layout to me. We don't need anything more complicated. But there might be a background image in our login screen, and maybe it's really high resolution, and we need to include this in our layout. So you might think that's simple. I put in a background attribute. It's fine. But you, the developer, know that this is actually going to do a bitmap decode operation on the main thread. And that's pretty bad for UX because our app is going to launch and it's not going to display anything until this bitmap's finished decoding. So we know we can swap this out for an image view. And once we do that, we can let Picasso take care of decoding it for us in a background thread, dramatically improving the UX of our app. And I guess what I'm kind of getting at here is it's important to understand what you're making the device do, especially when it comes time to like implement some quality user experience. There's this trend, right, of people moving away from understanding how computers work, whether that's implementing things for the sake of making them cross-platform, maybe you need to make them fast. But all of this does actually come at a cost of user experience, and I think we really need to think about this more often. So to summarize everything, I kind of want to make sure that everyone bucks this trend, right? I want us to start really thinking about how can we make some quality software? What are we making a computer do? Your domain-specific knowledge is super valuable. Communicate that to the other teams. There's so much benefit in becoming a disgruntled user because you have the power to change things. And really, I think we could all benefit from working really closely with the design team because there's so much we can learn. And because of our position as being the last bastions of hope for UX, I think we really need to learn about it. So thank you very much.